We got 5 stakes races to close out the meet at Churchill Downs. Sounds like a Sunday fun day. Let's talk about it on NYRA Bets. Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets. Here are the preview of 5 stakes races taking place on Sunday, June 29th at Churchill Downs. Now, before we get to this very exciting card, make sure to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, and so much more. We got a lot of coverage for you coming up next week for Saratoga and the rest of the summer, so we are your one-stop shop for everything horse racing and handicapping. All right. Well, listen, folks, like I said, it's a packed final day at Churchill Downs. 5 stakes races, 2 juvenile stakes races. You know I love those. We got one on the turf. We got the Maxfield. We got the Hanshin. Really good stuff. So let's dive into it. Going to talk through these 5 races, talk a little bit about the dynamics, where I'm going to be looking for some potential price plays, some value plays, where I think favorites are tough, etc. Well, let's dive into the very first race, which is the Bashford Manor Stakes, going 6 furlongs for 2-year-olds on the dirt. We always love these 2-year-old baby races. And it's interesting because a lot of times when you look at these 2-year-old races, they overwhelm you with early speed. A lot of these 2-year-olds, they tend to win on the front end. There's not a lot of passing in these juvenile races early on in their careers. And so usually when you see a race like the Bashford Manor or the Debutante, which I'll talk about in a second, there's just a preponderance of early speed. And you tend to look for a horse that comes from off the pace. Interestingly enough, there's not as much early speed here. There's some speed, certainly. You're going to expect a horse like the number 1 Spice Runner on the inside, son of Gun Runner, for Steve Asmussen. Blinkers are coming on. This horse showed good speed in debut, winning as an overwhelming favorite, 1-4 odds, I believe, that day. So listen, this one would certainly not be a surprise. 5-2 on the morning line, your favorite. I do worry about the inside rail. I just always worry about that with 2-year-olds, particularly sprinting. The blinkers are coming on. That might very well help. Jose Ortiz is up. Jose Ortiz is on fire. I'm recording this Saturday afternoon. As of the time of recording this, he has won the first 4 races on Saturday at Churchill Downs. So he is on track to try to potentially best Pat Day and Julian Leparoux's record of 7 wins in a single day at Churchill Downs. But he's on fire. So listen, you don't want to take anything that he's running lightly. And this one showed the ability to sit a little off the pace and then make up ground. I will say it had the perfect post, 5-horse field on the far outside, was able to get the job done there. Ran a 55 buyer. The buyers in the speed figures for these 2-year-old races, particularly in debut, I don't put much stock in this early in the year. A lot of times it's pretty tough. You talk to anybody who makes figures, it's hard to make these types of figures in those races. A couple of horses to consider, I think, as alternatives. Certainly, people are going to be drawn to the number 6 Salt Elliott for Doug O'Neill because of the big buyer speed figure. This one's coming out of a Cal-bred restricted race out at Santa Anita, going 4.5, got a 78 buyer speed figure. I think we're going to see some significant regression in all likelihood. Yes, that was an impressive win for sure, but now we're facing open company. We're traveling to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It's going to be a little bit tougher. Doug O'Neill 0 for 10 right now at Churchill Downs. Antonio Frezu has yet to get on the board as a jockey. So again, at a relatively short price, I'm going to be trying to play against this one a little bit. The 2 that I really think are interesting are the other 2 further outside, Comport and Password. I'm going to start with Password, who's my top selection for Rudy Brissett. This one had a tough trip, and this is the classic inside to outside move that I always talk about. I love when a horse goes from the inside rail where they experience trouble. Their next start, they're on the far outside. I always love seeing that. It's an angle I don't get to use very often, but when it pops up, I always make note of it. This one's sired by Uncle Mo out of a Street Cry mare. Go back and watch that preview, or go back and watch that race that he ran on June 1st. Got checked up early and was well behind the rest of the field early, and then made a move, got into the stretch. Pratt was getting after this horse to switch leads, to straighten out a little bit. This horse has massive strides when he was coming down the stretch and making up huge amounts of ground on the number 5 Comport for Eddie Keneally with Louis Saez up. Password looks like a very serious horse. If he gets away a little bit better, my gosh, he's going to like every single bit of ground. Like I said, big stride, very green in the stretch still. Presumably, you're going to see some improvement from the first to second race. has had some nice works leading up to this, including a gate work, which I actually like seeing Rudy take the horse back to the gate and go, let's get this situation straightened out. Let's make sure you can get out cleanly, etc. So you like seeing that. I think Password at 7-2 is good value. Comport, who won that race, also looked very, very good. Dueled up on the front end, held, and was able to get clear of the horse Cannoneer, if I'm not mistaken, who was dueling him up front. And so this one with Luis Saez up, listen, Luis is as strong a finisher as there is, would make a lot of sense in this particular race. So for me, I like Password and Comport. If you're looking at some of the 12-1 runners, the number 2 Long Strider, number 3 Duke of Suggins, maybe Duke of Suggins is the one that I'm a little bit more interested in out of the biggest prices. Coming out of a restricted maiden special weight race at Churchill, but did the 5 furlongs, had the 3rd place finisher come back to win next time out. I think there's at least a little something to like there with Duke of Suggins at a big price. Well, let's go to the Debutante and talk about this race. 6 furlongs for 2-year-old fillies. And again, a really interesting group and hard to get away from a horse like Essential Coffee for Steve Asmussen. This one technically lost in debut over a sloppy sealed track, but this one was so much the best, And you don't like talking about the elephant in the room all the time, but I think it is notable that Eric Asmussen, Steve's son, rode this horse first time out, got the horse into a position where he was DQ'd despite winning by 8.5 lengths. That's right, 8.5 lengths. You don't often see DQs for horses that win by 8.5 lengths. Who's up today? Flavien Prat. Okay. Now the racing's gotten serious. So I think that's a good thing. I still worry about the inside rail. However, this horse has outstanding early speed. So if this horse gets out and is clear, then I think it's a lot easier. Also, it should be pointed out the number 2, Vajra, who I don't have listed here, raced on Friday. So I doubt Rudy Perset's going to turn this one around on 2 days rest, and we're not at Royal Ascot and run this one again. So I think that you could safely say that that one's going to be a scratch. In terms of where I might be looking to try to beat Essential Coffee, I think that's not going to be easy to do, but I think you could look at a horse like America the Great at 7-2 from Mark Casse. This one came in second to a horse that I also like a little bit color coming in, who is 4-1 for Norm Casse. But I think Mark's horse might be the better one coming out of that race. Was off very slow that day, made up huge amounts of ground going 5 furlongs. Jose Ortiz again up on the mount. Again, you have to take everything he's on pretty seriously. This is a $1.2 million daughter of Curlin. You don't see a lot of $1.2 million daughters of anyone at the yearling sales. Huge expectations for this horse. And going longer is going to be this horse's friend. Curlin out of an AP Indy mare. You understand what brought the $1.2 million price tag. This one made up basically, 8 lengths during the course of the race last time out. This one just gets off a little bit better. I think you see this one run a huge race. 7-2 on the morning line would not surprise me at all. The other one that's a little bit interesting, just because I remember this race well at the spring at Keeneland, is the number 7 Percy's Bar. And always like the upstart fillies. And this one for Ben Colebrook with Lon Machado, the Axeman up on the mount, also made up a lot of ground that first time out. Inside rally going 4.5 at Keeneland. You never see horses make up ground going 4.5 at Keeneland. This one not only was 7 lengths back at one point, won by 4. I mean, it was so much the best that day. And very impressive because beat a horse Nana's Love. And Nana's Love, of course, is the horse that is the half to Fierceness and Mentee, and who won next time out. There's another horse, Kontiki, who came out of that race, who also won next time out at Horseshoe Indianapolis. So the race produced some horses that came back and executed next time out. I think this one at 9-2, a little bit of an interesting price in this particular race. 10-1, a horse like Lilies in Paradise for Mike Maker, sired by Maxfield, one of those first Maxfields that we're starting to get to see. Also would be appropriate on a day where you have the Maxfield Stakes later in the card. So those are kind of my thoughts on the Debutante. Should be a fun race. Essential Quality looks tough. America the Great and Percy's Bar is where I might be looking to try to beat her from a value standpoint. Well, let's go from the baby races to the big boy races, and let's go to the Hanshin Stakes, going a mile for 4-year-olds and up on the dirt. And this is a really nice field. especially for a listed stakes. You got Banishing, who nearly won the Churchill Downs Stakes 2 back. Came back, and you knew there was probably going to be a little bit of regression in terms of that blame stakes and going, regressing back down to a 92. You also wondered there was always going to be maybe a little bit of regression from that Oaklawn handicap where he ran a 106. I wonder if this horse is starting to just show the signs of a long campaign, because this horse hasn't had a break since last August and has been running big races since then, and has, whether it was the Byerly Turk, whether it was the Razorback, the Oaklawn Mile, the Oaklawn Handicap, the Churchill Downs Stakes, the Blame. I mean, all of that has happened since January to now. So this horse has been running regularly, running often, running different distances, going a mile and an eighth, going a mile, and 16th, going a mile, going 7, going 6. We're back to a one-turn mile. I think that's when this horse is at his best. I like this horse at a one-turn mile a lot. 2-1, regressing speed figures. Maybe he bounces back, picks Jose Ortiz back up, who gave him that incredible ride in the Churchill Downs Stakes where he nearly got up there to beat Mindframe. But for me, Banishing's a little bit of a play against. Saudi Crown certainly looks tough in this spot. Beat Mystic Dan last time out in the Lake Ouachita at Oaklawn Park. But we'll see in terms of, how that race comes back necessarily. Banishing beat this horse 2 back in the Oaklawn Mile. And Saudi Crown's one of those horses. I love Saudi Crown as a 3-year-old. And I was there when he won the Pennsylvania Derby. Disappointing in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but a mile and a quarter was never going to be what he did. I thought coming back at 4, man, he's got an opportunity to really make a stamp. And he won that Louisiana Stakes so impressively. And then he went over and ran a massive race. I cannot emphasize this enough. And that's Saudi Cup against Senior Bruscador and Ushba Tesoro, where he set the fractions and was the only one kind of staying up there on the front end, lost by less than a length. He really has never been the same horse after that. And that he came back and ran terribly in the Godolphin Mile a month later. He comes back. He wins the RA Cowboy Jones against a very mediocre field. Goes to Del Mar and had his whole campaign interrupted as a 4-year-old, because I remember they were going to run him in the ACAC to prep for the Del Mar Dirt Mile for the Breeders' Cup, and then that got rained out, and they didn't want to run him over a wet track, so he never really got a prep. Goes and runs terribly at the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, comes back to win the Tenacious, goes to the Pegasus World Cup, again, going a mile and an eighth, probably a bridge too far, comes back in the Oaklawn Handicap, even money favorite, loses his to Banishing, comes back in the Lake Ouachita, wins by a nose over Mystic Dan, who, of course, comes back to win next time out in the Blame. But again, was the 1-2 favorite and barely won that day. He does his best work up on the front end. I don't think he's going to get pressured too much, but, you have a horse like Tumbarumba who's got good early speed. You got a horse like Best Actor who's got good speed. Judge Miller's got good speed. They could try to gang up on him a little bit. And so as a result, the horses that I look to, if I'm trying to beat the top 2, are a horse a little bit like Extra Anejo for Steve Asmussen. I've always liked this horse a lot. $1.35 million Son of Into Mischief. Got that victory 2 back in the Commonwealth. I just don't think like the wet track and the Churchill Downs Stakes, and also maybe was a little over his head and against that grade 1 company. I think he's more of a listed stakes grade 3, maybe a grade 2 level horse, but he's going to be able to come from off the pace. He's got a nice late kick when he comes in. Just look at what he did in that Commonwealth. I think the 1-turn mile, I know he didn't run well in this race last year, but again, I think part of that was just kind of where he was in his development. He was still up on the front end. I think Steve's figured out this horse does better relaxing and coming from a little off the pace. That picks up Flavian Pratt, who rode him notably in that Commonwealth victory 2 back. The other horse that I like is Cagliostro. And this horse is a bigger price at 10-1 for Cherie DeVaux. Irad, not Jose, is up. But here's the thing. This year at Churchill Downs, Cherie's asked Irad to ride 7 times. You know how many times he's won? 5. So he's won 5 of the 7 times he's been up on a Cherie horse. 385 ROI. Now, he's a recent gelding, Cagliostro is. He's coming back from overseas. You always wonder about the Dubai bounce. But he acquitted himself well over there. He nearly won that Firebreak Stakes, which is a grade 3 over in Medan in January, and then came back and finished 4th to Fort Payne and Oasis Boy and Mendelssohn's Bay in that NYRA Stakes. And so I thought that, he ran well over there. He's had plenty of time to come back and get acclimated. He's had a nice series of works leading up to this in terms of working at Keeneland, and Cherie's kind of bringing him along nicely. Maybe this is just a spot to kind of bring him back and get him ready. He might have run out of his conditions a little bit to be able to drop back down into allowance company, although I think she still could have maybe found a spot for him. He won this race last year. I love the outside draw, and he's just a horse that is going to present outstanding value, in my opinion. So 10-1 on the morning line, Cagliostro. Maybe you think Matthew he's more of an underneath play. Okay, so be it. Still, including a 10-1 horse in your exactas and trifectas is not a bad thing. So for me, I think Cagliostro 10-1 presents some value coming from, again, off the pace. There might be a fair amount of speed in this race. Everybody's going to be chasing Saudi Crown, trying to put a little pressure, be pretty close. And again, I just think this horse sits the right sort of trip. And listen, Banishing maybe bounces back and runs a big race. Would not shock me with David Jacobson. His horses kind of will show form at different times. And so that it would not surprise me in the least to see a Jacobson horse revert back to form at this point. But like I said, I think Cagliostro, Extra, and Anejo, those are two horses to consider if you're trying to beat the two favorites. Well, let's head to the Anchorage Stakes, which is race number 9, and an interesting race because you have a couple of horses that are just clearly heads and shoulders above everyone else, and that is the number 7 Pinup Betty and the number 8 Charlene's Dream. I think it really is splitting hairs between these two a little bit. I'd just go to whoever the better price is. Pinup Betty's a horse I've liked for a while, and she loves Churchill Downs. All 3 of her victories in 16 career starts have come over the Churchill Downs turf. Here's another kicker. Luis Saez has been aboard her 5 times. All 3 of her victories have come with Saez riding her. So, this horse seems to A, like the Churchill Downs turf, B, like the distance, 2 for 4 winning at this distance, and C, likes the jockey Luis Saez, who just seems to know how to place this horse and get the best out of this horse and finish strong with this horse. 8-5 is a short price to take in any turf race, but I love the progression this one's making. 3rd back now in the form cycle from a lengthy layoff. We went 89 in the Distaff Turf Mile, almost beat Simply in Front at pretty decent odds that day too. It was nearly 12-1. Comes back to win the Mint Julep Grade 3 next time out at Churchill Down, beats Charlene's Dream, and is able to get clear. Has a nice closing kick. I just think looks pretty dangerous in the spot. Charlene's Dream maybe is able to turn things around. She's going to be up front in this race. She has great early speed. I don't know if there's other horses that are really going to be fast enough to press her, though I do think a horse like Generous Lover is what's going to make things a little bit more difficult. And so I find myself rooting for a horse like Charlene's Dream, who's a Texas bred who costs $35,000 and has won $332,000 on the track. You always love to see that. She's a Grade 3 winner in her own right in terms of winning that Gallarette back on Preakness Day. And Bejarano's back up now for the 2nd time in a row. But again, I worry about the trip and the pressure that a horse like Generous Lover might apply on the front and make things maybe a little too contentious, or just apply a little too much pressure. And a horse like Pinup Betty coming from off the pace, I think makes a lot of sense in this particular race. A horse that I always feel like I need to mention is Sparkle Blue. This one's coming off a bad effort last time out in that Gallarette, but I do wonder if she just didn't like the ground that day. Maybe getting back on a firm turf course, you might see her run a little bit better. She kind of comes in and out of form for Graham Motion, but Graham and I rat on this one, and there's something to like there, I think. And I wonder if this one can sit a little bit of a better trip. And interestingly enough, she tends to do her best work when she's a little bit more forwardly placed. She's had a gate to wire win, but she also, when she's sitting that kind of mid-pack trip, she tends to run really well. So if Irad can get her out sitting 3rd or 4th in this race, I think it's 6-1. She's a viable alternative to the top 2 choices. Well, let's close things out in the Maxfield Stakes. This one is going 7 furlongs over the dirt. And listen, I try not to go off on tangents. Now, some of you who watch my shows and videos will go, Matthew, you always go off on tangents. I have a lot of respect for Maxfield. Great horse, love Churchill Downs. I'm going to say it again. How the hell do we not have an Afleet Alex Stakes? We have a Maxfield Stakes and we don't have an Afleet Alex Stakes? Get the hell out of here. All right? I'm not saying it should be a Churchill Downs. Churchill Downs, Absolutely should name a race after Maxfield. He was automatic, it felt like, at Churchill. But how, as an industry, do we not have an Fleet Alex Stakes? All right. I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm just saying that. All right. But now this race, let me tell you something. This is a damn good race. You look at this race, and there's a lot of nice horses in here. There's a lot of horses that should be familiar to people. Horses that were either on the Derby Trail or now cutting back. Maybe some horses we get to see this summer up at Saratoga in terms of the H. Allen Jerkins. That'd be nice. Captain Cook, Retribution, Speed King, Flood Zone, Verifire. These are nice horses. I think they're all really good horses. You got the McKinsey on the far outside, who I know my colleague Kaylee Shapiro likes, Furio. This one won a big one for Joe Sharp last time out. Only time this horse ran against Stakes Company was in the Louisiana Derby and was just overmatched. That day. And I don't think this horse wants to go 2 turns. So cutting back, I think, made a lot of sense. So Furio at 8-1, interesting horse. I think definitely one to consider and doesn't really need to get much faster on the numbers. Verifire is an interesting horse for Brad Cox. And it's interesting. Starts the horse out at Colonial Downs on that Virginia Derby day. Wins by 6 1/4. Easy win. You go, okay. Big things coming for this horse. Next time, we run the horse on the Black Eyed Susan Day undercard, if I'm not mistaken, at Pimlico. And then 62 optional claimer goes off as the 1-9 favorite. Okay. I mean, it's great to keep cashing these checks, but when are we going to step this horse up? This is $1 million purchase by Resolute Racing. So I know John Stewart's very high on this horse, sired by Authentic out of a Smart Strike mare. Now, the good news is you saw a horse like Saxton, who was well beaten that day, come back to win next time out, and more importantly, actually improved his Beyer speed figure a little bit. Now, he was so far back that his Beyer speed figure was a bit different. I think he was a 76 and then ran a 79. But it's at least good to see there wasn't a drop-off there. Verifire's run 92-91 in terms of his Beyer speed figures his first 2 time out. He has good early speed, but he showed in debut he can pass other horses. So, he's a horse that I think you got to take pretty seriously at 5-1. Flood Zone's probably the horse I'm against in this race. He's coming back from overseas where he ran an absolutely nothing race in the UAE Derby. He won the Grade 3 Gotham over a horse like Sand Devil, who hasn't been won since. Garamond did come back to win next time out in a 3-horse field, mind you, and then promptly disappointed as the 6th place finisher in the Pegasus Stakes at Monmouth. So, again, how good was that Gotham? We'll see. I'm not that optimistic. Florent Giroux now up for Brad Cox after Ray Luke Gutierrez won that race in Gotham. Giroux had the horse and the mount over in the UAE Derby, but I'm going to be playing against this one coming back in the Dubai Bounce. Speed King, 5-1. Very famously, this is the horse that really made Sandman a big deal. And honestly, Mark Cassidy and Sandman should write Speed King a thank you letter every year because he went at Cornucopian and that Arkansas Derby. He went right at that Bashford horse, and they dueled to insanely fast fractions early in that race, considering they're going 1 1/8 miles. What happened? It's set up for Sandman, who came from well off the pace. Speed King fell all the way back to 6th. Should be pointed out, Cornucopian actually kind of held on to 4th. Thing is, Cornucopian didn't come back the same horse. Lost to Garamond, like I said, in that 3-horse allowance race. So you wonder, is Speed King going to be the same type of horse? Now, 47-4 work at Churchill last time out. Certainly would say Ron Moquette has this one in pretty good form. Ron Moquette's a great horseman, and you expect he's going to make sure that they're going to be able to come back and look good doing it. I think doing a 1-turn race makes a lot of sense for this horse, but it's not a lot of times you see in the race notes, Suicidal Duel caved. I usually avoid horses like that in their next start, particularly when they're 5-young in a deep field. You have a horse like Captain Cook. This is my top pick. I'm a big fan of this horse. This horse, I think, at 7 furlongs and a mile and a 1-turn mile is dangerous. I think 7 furlongs is perfect. The horse won at Aqueduct over a sloppy track, admittedly, but won over a sloppy track at 7 furlongs by over 9 lengths. I think this horse likes a 1-turn setup, sired by Practical Joke out of an Indian Charlie mare, tried the 2 turns and listen, got the 1 1/8 in the Withers, but then wasn't good enough to beat Rodriguez and Grande in the Wood Memorial, came back in the Peter Pan. I thought ran a pretty damn good race, actually, in that Peter Pan, but lost to McAfee and Hill Road. McAfee comes back, runs, I think, third in the Ohio Derby. Hill Road comes back to run kind of a nothing race in the Belmont Stakes, but still was running against decent company. The speed figures are there, 9-2 in the morning line. I think Captain Cook makes a lot of sense. The other horse that I would say you should strongly consider is Retribution at 8-1. Really like this horse for Cherie DeVoe. Won that Chick Lang, going 6 furlongs, and looked good doing it. Looked stronger late in the race. Touchy, who finished second that day, came back to win a stakes race, a big optional claiming race, I should say, last time out, which just was on Friday at Aqueduct. Won a $100,000 optional claimer and looked pretty good doing, got 86 buyer speed figures. So I think Retribution, who's done nothing but improve in 3 career starts for Cherie, showed that this one can switch off the Lasix, sired by Vacoma. I think 7 furlongs is where you want this horse. Jose Ortiz, Belladonna Racing. This is the triumvirate. Cherie, Belladonna, Jose Ortiz. This is a very, very good combination. So I think at 8-1, if you get anywhere near 8-1, this is a horse you got to seriously consider, considering who this one beat last time out and the upward trajectory of this horse's career to this point. So listen, that's going to do it for our preview of the 5 stakes races on Sunday at Churchill Downs. Hope you enjoyed this. We kind of went fast through these, but hopefully it connected you to some ideas and some winners. Make sure to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Next time you see me, folks, I'm going to be probably going to be talking about Saratoga. And I might very well be in Saratoga. We'll see. But the backdrop's going to stay the same. So you won't have any idea where I am. But we're going to have a lot of fun this summer at Saratoga. So like I said, press that like and subscribe button today. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.